Okay, let's unpack something really ancient and quite profound today. There's this verse in Pali.
Dulabanya ka manusata buduparo ka dulabho, dulabaka kan sampati sadamo paramadulahori.
Right, that one. Sounds intense. What's the basic meaning?
Well, it translates roughly as, being human is difficult to obtain, the arising of a Buddha is difficult, the opportunity of the right time is difficult, and the true Dhamma is supremely difficult.
Four things, all difficult, one supremely difficult.
Exactly. 4 major hurdles, you could say.
And today we're doing a deep dive into why they're considered so tough, right? We're looking at a specific source.
Yes, a really fascinating one. It's a Dharma talk from 1954 by a very revered Thai teacher, Phra Mongkolthepmuni. You might know him better by his later title, Phra Mongkolthepmuni.
Okay. And he had a particular take on these four difficulties.
He did. It wasn't just a general overview. His teaching links these difficulties to a very specific understanding of ethical purity and a particular meditation method involving inner Dharma bodies.
Dharma bodies. So our mission today is to understand from his perspective why these four are so rare and maybe what that means for us, for you listeners.
More precisely, what does this rarity imply about the life and opportunities we have right now?
All right, let's jump in. Difficulty number 1, the rarity of human birth.
Right. And your first thought is probably, hang on, there are nearly 8 billion of us. How rare is that?
Yeah, exactly. Seems like the most common thing ever from where we stand.
But this teaching asks us to, zoom out, way out. Think about the sheer scale of all life.
Okay.
The source uses examples like, just imagine all the fish and creatures in the oceans. Or, even more strikingly, it describes looking at a small piece of land, maybe just a couple of acres near the temple, and claiming the number of tiny living things there, ants, termites, mites, you name it, vastly outnumbers all the humans in, say, the entire Indian subcontinent at that time.
Wow. Okay, when you put it like that, our numbers suddenly seem less impressive.
It definitely gives you a different perspective.
Oh,
but it's not just about the numbers game. The crucial element here is something called human Dharma, manusaya.
Human Dharma? What's that?
It's essentially the ethical foundation of the level of inner quality required to even qualify for rebirth as a human being.
So like a prerequisite, what does it involve?
It involves 10 kinds of pure action. You've got 3 for the body.
Yeah.
Basically not killing, not stealing, and no sexual misconduct.
Standard precepts, okay.
Then 4 for speech, avoiding lies, divisive talk, harsh words, and idle chatter.
Right.
And finally, 3 for the mind. Not being greedy or covetous, having no ill will, and holding right view, correct understanding.
So the 10 wholesome actions, many Buddhists strive for these, still seems achievable, though difficult, right?
But here's the twist in this teaching. It makes it much harder. It's not enough just to practice these 10 yourself.
Oh.
You also must not encourage others to do these wrong things. You must not be pleased or find satisfaction when you see others doing them. And you must not praise people who do these wrong things.
Hold on. So 0 complicity, 0 finding any kind of, I don't know, vicarious thrill or agreement with wrongdoing, even in others.
Precisely that. It demands this profound level of inner purity and non-alignment with anything unwholesome, no matter who is doing it. It's only with that level of purity, the source says, that a being earns human rebirth. It even describes a subtle body entering the womb via a kind of luminous sphere, like an egg yolk.
A luminous sphere.
Yeah.
Linking conception directly to this deep ethical state. So the rarity isn't just population stats, it's the rarity of achieving this incredibly high standard of inner purity.
Exactly. Maintaining that level of integrity, not just in your actions, but in your responses to the world around you, day in, day out. That's the real challenge. That's what makes human birth genuinely rare from this perspective.
That really reframes it. Okay, what about the second difficulty? Udupado kadulabo, the rarity of a Buddha's arising.
Right. Now, this one has, let's say, 2 layers in this teaching. On one level, yes, it's about the historical event, how incredibly rare it is across cosmic time for a fully enlightened Buddha to appear in the world. Eons can pass without one.
We know that's considered extremely rare.
Extremely. But the teaching here puts maybe even more emphasis on the second layer, the arising of a Buddha within oneself. This is linked directly to realizing the Dhammakaya.
The Dharma body again, so accessing that inner potential.
Exactly. And realizing it is presented as incredibly difficult. The teacher, back in 1954, apparently mentioned that only a very few people who knew, including the monk he was speaking to and a small group, had actually achieved this inner realization.
So it's not just about waiting for history. It's about the personal internal achievement being just as rare, maybe even more practically so for us?
That's the strong implication. The teacher actually contrasts reaching this Dhammakaya with what he calls being childish. People fighting, competing, getting caught up in worldly conflicts and desires.
So realizing the Dhammakaya is like truly growing up spiritually.
That's the idea. Achieving a profound inner maturity, a peace that stops you from getting caught in all that external struggle.
And the source mentions specific benefits or powers coming from this.
It does. It talks about things like natural abundance, food, wealth, sort of arising naturally because you're aligned with reality, and also the genuine ability to guide others effectively. In fact, the monk being addressed in the talk, having apparently reached this state, was specifically being sent to teach in Japan. The implication is clear. This inner attainment is the real qualification for teaching.
That's quite a claim, inner realization leading to external effects like abundance and influence. It really stresses that the rarity is as much internal as historical.
It shifts the focus powerfully inward. It's about cultivating that Buddha nature inside.
Okay, which leads us nicely to the third difficulty. Dulabha katana sambati, the rarity of the opportune moment or the right time. What makes the timing so tricky?
Well, again, it's not just about being alive when Buddhism is around. It's about being in the right condition and place to actually hear it, understand it properly, and crucially, practice it. Effectively practice it in a way that leads to liberation.
So you could be born human, maybe even during a time when the teachings are available, and still completely miss the boat.
Absolutely. The source lists several inopportune moments, or places. The Pali term is akana, where practice is basically impossible.
Like what?
Okay, let's see. One is being born in a really remote, uncivilized place where the Dhamma just hasn't reached.
Made sense.
Another is being born in certain high heavenly realms. Beings there live for incredibly long periods, but there's no suffering to motivate them and no Dhamma teaching available.
Interesting. Too comfortable, maybe.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Then, being born human when the teachings are around, but you hold really strong, wrong views, so you just reject it.
Obstinacy.
Right. Or being born human but with significant disabilities. The source mentions being mute, deaf, blind, or having severe mental impairment that prevent you from understanding or practicing.
Tragic circumstances.
Also, being born in the lower realms, hells, animal realm, ghost realm, or as an asura when a Buddha appears, you just can't connect.
Too much suffering or delusion.
And finally, even being born human, with faculties, maybe knowing the basics, but still being dominated by subtle wrong views that stop you from going deep, from truly getting it or teaching it.
Wow, that's a lot of ways to miss the opportunity, even if you're technically here.
It really highlights that the opportune moment isn't just about being in the right century. It's a complex alignment of outer and inner conditions.
So what is the opportune moment then? What's the ideal combination?
It's being born human when the Buddha's teaching is accessible, having your full physical and mental faculties, and having genuine faith, and the willingness to practice specifically, to practice in the way this teaching prescribes, the way that leads to realizing the Dhammakaya.
That specific alignment sounds incredibly fortunate. And didn't the source say something extraordinary about those who do hit this rare jackpot?
It did. Something quite remarkable. It claims that those who attain this state, who reach the Dhammakaya, can actually interact with the Buddha in Nibbana. Like, visit him, talk with him.
Interact with the Buddha in Nibbana. That's profound.
It emphasizes just how connected to ultimate reality this state is considered to be. It's not just about learning, it's about accessing that reality directly.
A powerful image for a very rare opportunity.
Okay, that brings us to the fourth and final difficulty, the one called supremely difficult. Saddhammo Paramadalavo, the True Dhamma.
Yes, the True Dhamma, or Sod Dhamma. Now, in this specific teaching, this term refers very precisely to the internal reality we've touched on, these luminous spheres, the Dharma bodies, and the specific meditative path to realize them, leading ultimately to Buddhahood or arahantship.
So it's not the teachings in books or sermons heard, it's the inner realization itself.
Exactly. It's the experiential reality. The core instruction given is about focusing the mind. Where? At the absolute center of the body.
The center, how do they define that? It's described quite precisely. Imagine a line from your navel straight back to your spine. Now imagine another line crossing it, from your right side to your left side, at the same level as the navel, right where those two lines intersect, deep inside. That's the spot. The source uses a Thai term, klongak.
Okay. Navel level, dead center. Got it. What happens there?
The instruction is stark. The mind must stop right there. completely still.
Stop.
Yes. The teaching stresses that if the mind doesn't stop there, if it wanders outside that center point, it falls into the influence of Mara.
Mara, the tempter figure. So a wandering mind is a vulnerable mind.
That's exactly the point made. An unstilled mind caught by Mara leads to unwholesome actions, things driven by greed, hatred, delusion, and the source even links it to things like warfare, stemming from minds lacking inner shame. But when the mind stops, stills itself at that center,
Wow.
then it can enter the center of the center, and this is where the process unfolds. It leads to seeing a sequence of inner luminous spheres.
Spheres, like vision.
They're described as very specific experiential stages. First, the Dhammanupassatsatthapada sphere related to mindfulness of Dhamma. Then, by finding the center of that, you access the sila sphere, morality, the samadhi concentration, then panna wisdom, then vimutti liberation, and finally, vimutti jnana dasana, the knowledge and vision of liberation.
Wow, a whole progression. Center within center within center.
Exactly. Each sphere is nested within the previous one, accessed through its center. And reaching that final sphere, vimutti jnana dasana, is what allows you to see the subtle inner bodies.
The bodies you mentioned earlier?
Yes. The subtle human body, then a celestial body, a Brahma body, a formless Brahma body, and ultimately the Dhammakaya itself.
And the source actually gives sizes for these.
It does, quite specifically, which is unusual. It uses a chicken egg yolk as a unit for the lower ones. The first sphere, the gross human one, is egg yolk size. The subtle human, twice that. Celestial, 3 times. Up to the formless Brahma body sphere being 8 times the size.
8 egg yolks.
Okay. Then for the higher bodies, like the Dhammakaya, it switches to a unit called wa, which is about 2 meters. The gross Dhammakaya is described as 20 wa across.
20 watt, that's 40 meters, huge.
Huge. And the subtle Dhammakaya Arahant, the ultimate state, is even bigger, 30 wa, or 60 meters.
These are vast inner landscapes being described. And the Dhammakaya Arahant is the goal, the true Buddha in this view.
Yes, the gross and subtle forms of the Dhammakaya Arahant are identified that way.
And this internal realization actually redefines the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha.
Within this teaching, yes, the gross Dhammakaya Arahant is the Buddha gem. The subtle Dhammakaya Arahant is the Sangha gem. And the essential Dharma sphere creating the Dhammakaya is the Dharma gem. It internalizes the refuge.
I see. So the supreme difficulty is achieving this very specific, profound internal state through this precise meditative path. It requires that absolute stillness at the center.
Exactly. That stillness is key. Without it, the mind is outside, influenced by Mara, leading to turmoil. Inside, centered in this true Dhamma, is peace, purity, true happiness. The teaching calls it the Dharma of peace.
It's very clear why accessing that would be considered supremely difficult. It sounds like a very demanding inner science.
The source emphasizes that even just hearing about this path is rare, let alone successfully practicing it to fruition.
Okay, so we have these 4 immense difficulties. The ethical purity needed for human birth, the internal realization of the Dhammakaya, hitting that narrow opportune moment, and mastering this incredibly specific path to the true Dhamma. Given all that, the source then talks about something that seems to offer a way through, or at least significant help, merit of monastic ordination.
Yes, absolutely. The 1954 talk places huge emphasis on the merit generated when someone ordains, especially for their parents and sponsors.
How much merit are we talking?
It's described in terms of kalpas. Remember those? Vast, vast units of time.
I do. Almost impossible to grasp.
Well, the source says ordaining someone as a novice brings merit equivalent to 8 kalpas of happiness. Ordaining them as a monk brings 16 kalpas. And for the mother who sponsors her son becoming a monk, it's an incredible 24 kalpas of happy existence.
24 kalpas. Didn't the source use some analogies to try and explain how long a kalpa is?
It did. 2 classic mind-bending analogies. One is, imagine a solid rock mountain, huge, like miles high and wide a yojana. Once every 100 years, a deity wipes it with a fine silk cloth. A kalpa is the time it takes for that entire mountain to be worn away by that single gentle wipe every century.
That's staggering. You can't even picture it.
The other is similar. Imagine a huge container, miles across and deep. Once every 100 years, you drop 1 tiny mustard seed into it. A kalpa is how long it takes to fill that entire container with mustard seeds at that rate.
Okay, those analogies definitely get the point across. Immense doesn't even begin to cover it. 24 of those for a mother.
It really highlights the perceived spiritual value of supporting ordination in this tradition. And the talk contrasts this sharply with ordinary ways of showing gratitude to parents.
Like looking after them when they're old. providing for them.
Exactly. The source acknowledges that as showing gratitude, being thankful, the term used is katanyu, but it says that's not true repayment, which is kataveti.
So material support isn't enough for true repayment. What is then?
According to this teaching, true repayment is helping your parents develop real faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, helping them keep precepts, gain confidence in the path, understand karma, good and bad actions.
Guiding them spiritually.
Yes. And the source says the highest form of repayment, the ultimate way to repay that debt, is to help your parents attain the Dhammakaya themselves.
Help them achieve that supremely difficult fourth thing we just talked about.
Exactly. And it notes that daughters can do this too, not by ordaining, but by encouraging their parents' practice. Maybe taking them to the temple to observe precepts, guiding them towards that understanding and potential realization.
Interesting. And what about the person who actually ordains? What's in it for them directly?
Well, immediate social respect is mentioned, even historical protection from certain legal issues. But the main thing is the personal merit. It's described as immense, immeasurable, even beyond those kalpa analogies used for the sponsors. This merit also contributes to the continuation of the religion itself.
So ordination, especially if it leads towards that Dhammakaya realization, is presented as this incredibly powerful act navigating the difficulties, generating huge merit for everyone involved, and fulfilling the deepest kind of filial piety.
It's framed as becoming a true relative of the religion, as the source puts it, yatna prasasana, deeper than just being a lay supporter. It mentions King Ashoka. His vast material donations didn't make him a true relative, but when his children ordained, he became one.
That really underscores the special status given to ordination here.
Definitely. And the talk concluded by emphasizing that the great merit the newly ordained monk had generated, particularly through attaining the Dhammakaya, was being directed to support his mission to spread the teaching, especially in Japan, and urged his family to rejoice and support that effort.
So to wrap up this deep dive, we've looked through the lens of this specific 1954 teaching at 4 profound difficulties. The sheer unlikelihood of achieving the ethical purity needed for human birth, the rarity not just of a historical Buddha, but of realizing the Dhammakaya within, the incredibly narrow window of the truly opportune moment, and the supreme difficulty of finding and mastering this precise meditative path to the true Dhamma, those inner spheres and bodies.
And we saw how monastic ordination, particularly when connected to that Dhammakaya realization, is presented as a central way to engage with these difficulties, generating vast merit and fulfilling deep spiritual obligations.
It leaves you thinking, doesn't it? Given how extraordinarily rare these 4 things are portrayed in this teaching and the demanding path described, what does that perspective suggest about the value, maybe the potential, of the life and the opportunities that you have right here, right now? Definitely something to ponder.